Hey everybody, so this is A.R.S.E, a Random Stoner Explains. First, we're going to do a quick update on 3i Atlas, which is exiting perihelion right now. And so the sentence I saw on the news today said, non-gravitational acceleration. So what does that mean? That means that 3i Atlas is going faster, that can't be explained by using the sun's gravity, so it's has its own propulsion. And the and then there's been some more research done on the brightening of 3i Atlas before it reached perihelion, which, as I said in my first video, there was a 9-time factor, so meaning that it got 9 times brighter across all the spectrums of light that were being measured, which was 6 different spectrums if I remember. And that's also now being deemed unexplainable through traditional understanding of comets, whatever that means also. So I guess what they're saying is that they can't explain it, and they're not going to. NASA's stonewalling everybody. They're not releasing no images, and they're not releasing any information from what they've captured. So from my understanding, it is detectable now that it's been a couple of days since it's been behind the sun, but it's not yet observable because of the brightness of the sun from the Earth-based telescopes. So like I said, that will happen in early December, and until then we'll get another update. Alright guys, so another chapter of my forensic mythology series, and this one's going to be on the biblical flood and its possible source being the Black Sea Inundation, which was when the Black Sea was formed prior to the seawater infiltrating, I guess, from the Mediterranean into the Black Sea. It was a freshwater lake that was shallower, I guess, than what it is now, and there was some people that lived along the shores of that lake. Those people had a cult of the bull, meaning that they worship bulls. They were on the northern slopes of the Taurus Mountains, which means bull also, and they believed that there was a bull that lived at the top of the mountains that ran across the sky and created thunder. And they're the ones that were affected by the flood, primarily the people on the northern slopes of the Taurus Mountains on the Black Sea. So that flood happened 7,600 years ago, give or take, which would be like 5,600 BC. And that was when a land bridge, the Bosphorus Strait, collapsed and connecting the Black Sea to the Mediterranean. And so the people that lived on the coast of the old Black Sea lake, I guess, their towns were washed away, and they had to move farther up the mountains, and some of them went over the mountains and into West Asia, or the southern slopes of the Black Sea. So that would lead to the Sumerian culture and the story of the Epic of Gilgamesh, which is where the flood story was first written down. So the Epic of Gilgamesh, is the oldest known written story. I want to clarify that. It's the oldest known written story, and that's about 5,000 years old, give or take, a little bit older. And that's where the first flood story was written down. So that's also a possible origin of the flood being a punishment. The fact that so many towns and cities were wiped out by the flood, and that's where like God was angry and washed away the bad people or whatever, you know. So like I said, after those stories made their way over the Taurus Mountains and into West Asia on the southern slopes of the Taurus Mountains, and eventually, you know, into the Sumerian culture, becoming the Epic of Gilgamesh. That in itself, the Epic of Gilgamesh, became the influence for the Greeks Hercules, and the Old Testament of the Bible, which is also known as the Torah of, in Judaism. So the flood did happen, but the version of the Bible was written about 5,300 years after it happened. So it's not really what you would call like an accurate story of the Bible. Like to me, it's more like the Bible is history of the West Asian cultures, that existed before the writing of the Torah. Interestingly enough, about the Epic of Gilgamesh, the survivor of the flood, which the Noah character is based on in the Bible, his name was Utnapishtim. He had the secret to immortality, and in the story, Gilgamesh has to go look for him to get the secret of immortality. So that was a pretty interesting aspect to that story of the flood. Because Noah, in the biblical flood, he passes on, and his children, repopulate the earth or whatever. So, in summary, I guess, the flood being true, that it did happen, the Black Sea inundation would be considered a flood. That doesn't necessarily validate the Bible, but it does show that the people that wrote the Bible, the biblical era Hebrews, were retelling the history of West Asia, and that's what those stories are based on. There's some other aspects of that I want to get into in other videos, like who Moses really is based on, and Adam and Eve and stuff like that, where those stories actually come from. Who the snake in the Garden of Eden really was. Anyways, I don't want to get too carried away now because I want to talk about those in the other videos. I read the Epic of Gilgamesh in college. I don't want to sound old, but 28 years ago. And the book that I read was called The Northern Anthology of Ancient Literature, Volume 1. It's a textbook, but it's a really good book. There's everything. So the Ancient Literature series of the Northern Anthology of the Northern Literature books covers everything from the Epic of Gilgamesh to the Gutenberg Bible, which is the first printed book. And it covers, it doesn't have everything in between, but it has a lot of stuff. Like you'll find examples of 4,000-year-old Chinese poetry, some Greek plays that are a lot better than anything you'll see on TV or in movies today. There's a lot of stuff in there. It's a pretty good read. It's 4,000 pages, but it's worth the effort to be slogged through it. So I guess that's it. Yeah, so the flood did happen. And, I guess there was somebody that survived the flood because they told the story. And I guess that would be that. So good night, y'all. I want to go because my cats are finally waking up. I try to do this while they were sleeping, but they could hear me talking, so they got up right now. So good night. Namaste. Like, share, and subscribe, like I said. And, yeah, good night, y'all.